How can I shrink a Windows 10 partition? I use a big single partition on a 1 TB platter drive with Windows 10. I would like to shrink the partition down so that I can mirror the drive to a smaller but faster 256 GB SSD. I bought the drive without planning much. Oops, I saw that I'm only using 195 GB and thought, damn, why don't I speed this thing up? But after a very time-consuming defragment/optimize using the Windows 10 tool optimize drives, it seems I can only shrink to 488 GB. As far as I know, I need to get the source partition smaller than the target partition before I can mirror. But short of the defrag that I've already done, I'm not sure what to do. I could cull a bunch of programs and reduce the space I'm using, but I'm already using far less than the total size after shrink. How can I reduce a partition's minimum size, i.e. the total size after shrink?
There seems to be absolutely no need for any third-party software. I have followed the instructions here, and I successfully shrank my OS partition in about 10 minutes. Running under Windows 10, but I doubt it makes a difference here. The steps are: disable hibernation. At A and elevated, admin, command prompt, run the command. Disable page file. Open the system page in control panel. From this PC, my computer, open the properties. Click Advanced System Settings, then in the System Properties dialog's Advanced tab, open the Performance Settings, go to the Advanced tab, click Change. Under Virtual Memory, untick Automatically Manage Paging File Size for all drives, select the drive you want to shrink, select No Paging File and click the Set button. Disable System Protection. In the System Properties dialog as above, go to the System Protection tab, click Configure, and select Disable System Protection. Restart. Now the 3 files that were preventing partition reduction are gone. Reduce partition size, and then restore the 3 items. If disk management complains that there is not enough space available on the disk to complete this operation, even though you entered a size, it should work according to disk management's own figures. C cannot shrink C, partition, not enough space. I have later found similar instructions at other places, all of them mentioning only these 3 items.
The interesting fact which often goes unsaid is that after a partition shrink, the minimum size is also reduced, of course, if you have free space, defragged, no unmovable files, etc. I use this method to successfully shrink a system volume, C, on Windows Server 2012 R2 from 500 GB, with only 50 GB of actual data, to 80 GB. The first time I tried to resize it, the minimum size was around 425 GB. Tip: if your volume is not a system one, you may wish to skip the initial steps before restart. Open a PowerShell prompt with administrative rights. First, disable settings which can keep unmovable files. Disable and delete page file. Disable hibernation, Desktop Windows only. Disable System Restore, Desktop Windows only. Restart the computer. Defrag, equivalent to, defrag C column/L/D/K/G/H. Get the remaining size in GB. Resize partition, use the above value plus 23 GB. Get the remaining size again. Resize partition reduced it. Rinse and repeat until you reach the desired size. Finally, restore computer settings. Enable page file. Enable hibernation, desktop Windows only. Enable system restore, desktop Windows only. Restart the computer.
The answer by Sancho.s works, but I'll leave this here in case anyone is looking for a quicker approach and is comfortable with third-party tools. As the comments point out, the problem was files that couldn't move during a partition shrink or defrag because they were locked by running applications and by Windows. The simplest way to unlock those files is to stop the processes, and the simplest way to stop the processes is to not let them start. Hence, I started looking for a boot time defragment tool. As recommended by Louv and Fick, I use this free partition manager, so I didn't need to defragment after all. Just start the tool, queue a partition job, and restart your computer. Start the tool, click the partition to resize, and click Move/Resize. Set the size and click OK. Apply the changes. If you're shrinking lots like I was, it will prompt you to do it at reboot. Just restart the computer from the dialog box and sip your coffee for a bit.
The key point is this part of the info message you posted. You cannot shrink the volume beyond the point where any unmovable files are located. From Microsoft, shrink a basic volume. Additional considerations. When you shrink a partition, certain files, for example, the paging file or the shadow copy storage area, cannot be automatically relocated, and you cannot decrease the allocated space beyond the point where the unmovable files are located. If the shrink operation fails, check the application log for event 259, which will identify the unmovable file. If you know the cluster or clusters associated with the file that is preventing the shrink operation, you can also use the futil command at a command prompt, type futil volume query cluster /. For usage, when you provide the query cluster parameter, the command output will identify the unmovable file that is preventing the shrink operation from succeeding. In some cases, you can relocate the file temporarily. For example, if the unmovable file is the paging file, you can use Control Panel to move it to another disk, shrink the volume, and then move the page file back to the disk. If the number of bad clusters detected by dynamic bad cluster remapping is too high, you cannot shrink the partition. If this occurs, you should consider moving the data and replacing the disk. Do not use a block-level copy to transfer the data. This will also copy the bad sector table, and the new disk will treat the same sectors as bad even though they are normal. You can shrink primary partitions and logical drives on raw partitions, those without a file system, or partitions using the NTFS file system. You should first check the application log, as indicated. If the unmovable file is the paging file, you can try to temporarily relocate it to another drive, then retry shrinking. However, if there are other unmovable files that prevent shrinking which you can't remove/relocate, then you won't be able to shrink using the built-in facility. In that case, you'll need to use a third-party partitioning/imaging tool. There exist both free and paid such tools.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.